Thursday the 22nd, about 7:45, 4 days post full moon. Probably won't get dark until about 9:15, maybe 9:30. I thought we'd have a look at the mountain. I'm using the camera that will be mounted in the scope, so it may not be very bright. But as you can see, canyon mountain looks tight. Although there may be a little residual smoke, the reality is that it's mostly gone. However, if you're interested in the long trails, I don't know that we're imaging that one, are we? There's a lot. I've been seeing a number of chemtrails today during the day. Scope is set up. I've oriented it towards Altair. I had to reset the time. It was off, interestingly enough, not by too much, despite the fact it's been more than a week since I have been doing any real-time imaging. A little peculiar. Usually it would have been off by at least 30 seconds, but it only seemed to be about 5 seconds off. So, I'll have to keep an eye on that. Anyway, there's that look. For those of you who Vanessa and I met during our travels, this is Penty the Observatory. It's got a 6-inch ED refractor in it, which gives fine color resolution, merges the various colors of the color spectrum to a similar point on the focal plane. The observatory does a good job of protecting against the elements. And however, I do have a nest right there, which I will not take down until the wasp season is over. I understand folks in England are not having as many wasps as they used to have. Probably some change in the environment there. And you're perfectly willing to fly over to Portland Airport and rent a car and come on up to John Day and grab this wasp's nest. But as long as you do it gingerly so they all actually survive the trip back to England. Anyway, there's a scope. I'm going to mount the camera at the back. I have no idea what we'll be imaging tonight, but find something that's culminating and we will have a look around. And culmination basically means pretty much right where that very flat V is seen to the horizon, almost due south. So there we go. Okay, it's about 5 minutes after 9. We just centered the scope up on Altair. I had actually synchronized it probably about 45 minutes ago. And over the course of those 45 minutes, the tracking basically left Altair right about there. Now, I didn't do the synchronization through the screen. I just did it through a finer scope, so maybe it was a bit off. What I want to do tonight is play with settings once again and see if I can't optimize for some attractive aesthetic views of the field of view. I think what I'll also do is do a zoom. I haven't been putting as much in the way of comments and videos lately. I'm actually waiting to resume the NGC series, but we'll start with 1000, which I completed last January up to about 1000, but unfortunately I got behind due to travel, etc., so I wasn't able to synchronize with the night sky as well. So for the next couple of months, I'll basically just be tooling around, playing with settings, unless I get inspired to do some particular project. Mostly what we're going to be looking at is nice aesthetic views of the night sky using the Rev 2 imager, the 6-inch ED refractor, and displaying everything on TFT monitor screen is captured by the Sony Handycam with comments, incidental comments along the way. So there's our look at Altair, and that's where we should be looking for most of our studies to turn up this evening. Once again, I think I'll pretty much be sticking with studies that are culminating, but let's start with the Dumbbell Nebula, just to get a sense of the seeing conditions tonight. Those conditions should be good, although it's a bit windy. However, the smoke has cleared up quite a bit. We're 3 days post full moon, so for probably the next half an hour or so, we should get good dark skies. And I am seeing, without much dark adaptation, the Milky Way sprawling across the heavens through Cygnus and heading south. Here we have a nice baseline view of Dumbbell Nebula, Planetary Nebula, Messier 27 against a rich star field in Vulpecula. Will allow it to develop. Now the things we're looking for, the dumbbell aspect is fairly clear in through here, but there are football-like extensions that go off on a different angle. Remember, we are looking at this planetary nebula, not like the Ring Nebula M57, where we're looking pretty much along the polar axis. We are looking along the equatorial axis. I like the view we're getting. The central star is of magnitude 14.1. The nebula itself is large, 6 by 8 arc minutes. It's peppered with numerous line-of-sight stars as well. One of the things to notice about all planetary nebula is the central stars are extremely hot in the 100 to 150,000 degree range. They are typically stars on the path to becoming white dwarfs. They are no longer nucleosynthesizing hydrogen. Their masses are fairly low, so they won't nucleosynthesize much in the way of helium or any of the heavier astronomical metals. So this is a star at the end of its lifespan, going out in a blaze of nebular glory. Here we have another baseline nebular study. It's NGC 6888, also known as the Crescent Nebula. And what we're looking for here is the very brightest part of the Crescent Nebula. For instance, in this region here is visible through a 6-inch scope on a good night of seeing if you're using a nebular filter. What we want to see through a larger scope is the full extent of nebulosity swinging from right about at this location around, and you should be able to see some nebulosity here. And with further exposure and a very good night, we should see some strands of nebulosity extending out in this region as well. So those are the things you want to look for on the screen right now. Very beautiful star-like field. The stars all look nice and round. However, the brighter stars, which are probably around the magnitude 9 or 10 or so, are rather bloated, and you wouldn't see that at the eyepiece of a telescope. As mentioned in earlier videos, the eye is much more adaptive to ranges of brightness and giving reasonable resolution than something like this Rev2 CCD imager, which tends to expose everything to the same level and does not have regions of variation in the abilities of the eye to optimize for both resolution and brightness. So you get a lot of spillover effect for neighboring regions of the CCD imager and the display. So why don't we go ahead and continue to have a look at that. And given the position of the scope, NGC 6888 is not culminating at this point. So, however, I have done a series of studies up to NGC 7000, and I think what I will do is accept the fact, why don't we just jump back maybe to the 6000 series and retrace our steps, because the last time I ran from the 6800 series forward was when there was a good deal of smoke in the atmosphere, so it might be nice to see if we can catch some decent views of the same studies. Notice once again we're getting some nebulosity extending into the interior part of NGC 6888, the Crescent Nebula. Let's watch this open cluster develop as I look up the data. This is NGC 6802. It's a fairly condensed cluster, and that's one of the reasons I selected it. Consists of, it's an open cluster of Vulpecula. Total magnitude is 8.8, but very small, 3.2 arc minutes, with 50 stars, so reasonably compact. Brightest stars are magnitude 12.9. It's a class 3-1. So I imagine the 3 represents how disparate the magnitudes are. That's a Roman numeral 3. And the 1 talks about how condensed the cluster is. It's a fairly attractive cluster in a rich field. It has a very horizontal aspect to it. It's not very circular at all. It looks rather boxy, almost like a flag waving in the heavens. As you continue to look at this cluster, which is at right ascension 1930-35, declination 2015-42, I'll continue to skip along to other possible views. 6803 is a very small planetary nebula. However, 6804 is a fairly large one, maybe half the size of the ring. Let's have a look. We have, of course, seen NGC 6804, Planetary Nebula in Aquila, much earlier, maybe 2 weeks ago while we had a lot of smoke in the sky. The stars really do look quite nice in this region. Throughout this region, of course, we're in the Milky Way. The planetary is magnitude 12.4, which puts it about 3 magnitudes fainter than the ring. It's about half the size at 63 by 50 arc seconds, so about an arc minute in size. And an interesting to look at because it gives you an idea of what a 1 arc minute sized galaxy should appear like on the screen in terms of extension. Central star is magnitude 14.2. It's at a distance of 5,600 light years, which is probably 3 times that of the Ring Nebula. We're at right ascension 1931-35, declination 9/13/31. We are above the ecliptic, or the Earth's equatorial region. NGC 6809 is a deep south globular cluster in Sagittarius. Its magnitude 6.3, 19 arc minutes in size. Its brightest star is 11.2 magnitude. However, we are almost 31 degrees in negative declination. Of course, 6809 has another designation, and that is Messier 55. It's a class 11 cluster located 17,000 light years distant. So in terms of distance, it's about 2/3 that of the Great Hercules cluster. And in terms of magnitude, some 0.7 magnitudes fainter. But it is a very nice look despite its deep southerly location. I'm also pleased with the amount of tracking because we've gone from the fairly far north of the observatory to the deep south, and things are centering up quite well. Let me check out another study as we continue our look. There's an NGC 6814, which is a brightish galaxy in Aquila. Let's go there next. Okay, one way to pick out galaxies is to watch them develop from the beginning. Stars tend to pop out in the first pass of about 2.5 seconds and then stabilize, but galaxies take a bit longer to reveal themselves on the screen. Now I can see this galaxy on the screen. It looks a little larger than that planetary nebula we saw, which is about 1 arc minute in size. I'll give you the data, but from my own experience, when imaging galaxies, we barely see, at best, 50% of a galaxy's full extent, even through the imager, which replicates views that are approximately that of a 20-inch telescope. But I'll give you the data on NGC 6814. I would expect to see that NGC 6814, located right about there, is going to have a ring. Let's see, because it seems to have one present on the screen. We just had a satellite pass. NGC 6814, galaxy in Aquila, magnitude 11.2, quite bright and large, 3.5 by 3.5 arc minute, face on, spiral with a bar, lowercase bc, and a ring some 70 million light years distant. So we've just had an opportunity to validate that we could see the ring around an 11.2 magnitude galaxy. And the reason that's important is most rings are probably 4.5 magnitudes fainter than the galaxy overall. So this would put it at about 15.7 or almost 16th magnitude. And that tells me we're getting quite a good night of viewing. Once again, a rich star field. We are looking through the Milky Way to turn up this 11.2, largish 11.2 magnitude galaxy. Too faint for Messier to have detected, but later in the 18th century, Herschel certainly would have been able to see it had he turned his scope to this part of the sky. Once again, I'm going to initialize an image capture as soon as we've centered on our study. And ordinarily I wouldn't go this deep south for a galaxy, but I thought it might be intriguing to see if we can detect it. This is NGC 6816. Let me look up the data. Okay, let's see if we can pick a galaxy out here. Now it could end up further to the north on the screen than we expect, given the deep south location. Remember that location of Messier 55, which was in this region here. NGC 6816's galaxy in Sagittarius, magnitude 13.4, 1.7 by 1.1 arc minutes. I do believe we are seeing it right at the tip of my finger there. We're at minus 28.5, almost a half degrees in declination, with a right ascension of 1944.02. NGC 6816 is a lenticular spiral, 275 million light years distant. It's probably about 100,000 light years in diameter. 1.7 by 1.1 oblately presented lenticular spiral galaxy. Nice that we're seeing it. And at magnitude 13.4, I wouldn't expect to see anything that far south fainter than maybe the 14.5 magnitude. So this is about 1 magnitude brighter than anything we might want to detect. Not bad at all. Okay, it's 10 o'clock now, and I had a problem with the camera. Apparently it's been accumulating static image movie scenes for years now, and I haven't been deleting them, so it gave me a message it was full. So I've realigned the scope with Altair once again and centered it up. Let's go after a few more studies. So, okay, let's move on from here. Once again, we're imaging Altair. Let's have another look at NGC 6888, because the moon is now beginning to rise, visible above the horizon. The sky is brightening, and this will give us an idea of what effect we're having on the views. As we watch the Crescent Nebula once again develop on the screen, I am going to make this the Carpe Noctem view, because the moon is 3-day post, 3-day full moon. We've now entered the first quarter. Well, no, this would be the third quarter of the moon, sorry. I do not want to spend any more time imaging if we don't get a halfway decent view. It looks like the Crescent Nebula looks pretty nice after all, despite the fact the moon is now looming. However, it's getting quite windy. I'm going to go ahead and reassemble the observatory and knock off for this evening. We had a number of nice views, and this one, of course, is occurring later at night, a little after 10, with the third quarter post 3-day moon now looming to the north and to the east. So with that, we will say Carpe Noctem. dark.
Never wrong, so true as when old time music is deep inside of you.